So you can hear me, everybody? Well, so my life. My number one fear is public speaking. And here I am. And I'm terrified. I'm shaking. I was going to have the hypnotist hypnotize me, but we didn't get to that. A little bit about me. My name is Boris. I run Mills Gallery. This gallery is kind of in the news right now because I'm doing things completely different, working with people that are amazing. I put my foot down and I said, I really don't care that much about the art. I care about the artist, because without the artist, there's no art. And that's kind of what my story is. That's what Mills is. And now this amazing lady.
Well, Boris and I have had countless coffee conversations since we started working together and thinking deeply about really what's important, and who hasn't in a pandemic started to reflect. What's important? What am I going to do with the time that I have left here on the planet? And we boiled down to one thing that we thought was pretty important. It's a very simple idea, is sharing. How do we want to show up in the world and share of ourselves? How have we shared in the past? What and why? And we think that there is a really benefit to thinking intentionally about your sharing. And so my background is as a curator and as a consultant, working in the arts and working collaboratively and also working in philanthropy. So I know the power of sharing and the impact of sharing, working with donors. So thinking a little bit more is like, well, how can we get better at this sharing thing? How can we really think and get better at sharing?
Wasn't there some kind of strategy out there for us?
Yeah, we started asking that question. Could there be a strategy for sharing, a personal strategy? And we said share strategy. Wow, share strategy. Isn't that a neat idea? It's two S's, alliteration, share strategy.
And
What
so
do
I
we do
thought,
with that?
okay, I'll kill this thing right away. I'll get on the internet and I'll find a million. There is not one share strategy. Think about it. Nobody put those two words together to create an idea, which we did.
Right.
We've now copyrighted it, so we're good.
But in looking further and researching share strategy, sharing, what we did find was a lot of information about how to protect your research if you share it, how to get better at stock shares and monetizing stocks.
It's financial stuff, how to grow your wealth and how to hold on to it.
So we thought, well, there doesn't seem to be deep conversations about the benefits of sharing and how we can do it better. And so this is what we've been talking about in the pandemic. And you might say to yourself, big whoop. I mean, I learned how to share when I was a kid. Why is this important? Why are we talking about this? So
my sister Tanya is in the audience, and I think you're going to enjoy this. My first conscious awareness of sharing is when I was, I think, 8 or 9, and I was in a foreign country, Nicaragua, and I was sitting in the sandbox, and I had a beautiful blue plastic toy that I was drawing around on the, on the sand and stuff. And my mother said, "You have to share this toy. You have to play. You have to let the other kids play." And I thought in the back of my head, this is not going to end well. And it didn't. They broke my toy. And I was furious at my mother. And I did not understand that the lesson that she was trying to teach me is the toy is only half as much fun if you don't let people play with you. You have to share the rewards to have twice as much fun. So I ended up hurting myself because the lesson I learned was sharing sucks.
well, it wasn't just the train that was broken. It was the trust.
In myself.
And trust of others. When you do share, I mean, I loaned my Barbie and she came back without hair. So that was a bad story, a tragic story in sharing gone bad.
Yeah, we
sharing
had
gone bad. But I don't think we consider how powerful sharing can be and what happens when we change a life by a simple act of an interaction. You have a good story about that.
Well, my first story about sharing is what I call unintentional sharing. I was forced to share my goods, and that didn't go well. The second time around, it happened here at the Fresh Market. And it's also interesting that the first time around, I was a child being forced to share, and this happened 2 weeks ago, as a 56-year-old man. I was in front of a cashier who I could tell was going through something. Her eyes were moist, she was shaking, and everything good about me knew that I had to be careful, because whatever I did was going to affect whatever decision she was going to make by the end of that day, whether she was going to quit, whether she was going to tell her boyfriend that she's cheating, whether she was going to tell her parents that she had cancer, whatever, fill in the blank. And so I was nice to her. I smiled when I talked, and I did something I really rarely do. I thanked her for making my day better. And all of a sudden, that face, which was a turmoil of pain, was actually relieved that somebody acknowledged her.
And so you never underestimate the power that you can have by sharing of yourself with someone, intentionally or unintentionally. And as we started talking more about share strategy and how it could be applied in your own personal life, it is personal, we started talking about the unintentional sharing that we do on a daily basis. My aunt always says, be aware and take responsibility for the energy you bring in a room, or when you're on the phone. And I think a lot about that, the impact of unintentional sharing and the way that energy, we've had people talking about energy in these TED Talks tonight, and the way that energy can really impact another person for good or bad. For good or for bad. And then also considering our intentional sharing in your strategy. I like to think about that, and what can I do better for someone else, and what do they need? So the big idea here is related to intentional and unintentional sharing.
Well, and I have a story about that too. Sometimes you can have both energies in the same situation. For example, the story I like to tell, she likes coffee. I got her a wonderful cup of coffee. That was my intentional sharing. That's what's going to make this person I love happy. But the unintentional sharing was here. It was like so bothersome to having gotten it and gotten in the car and come back that instead of saying, here, I have this for you, I just gave her this. So I had gone through all this drama to get a cup of coffee, and then I just go here. So both energies simultaneously, total washout. There was nothing really special about the situation, because both energies are weapons in a way.
Weapons, or they can be forces for good. You can lift people up with your sharing or not. We looked at the definition of sharing, and Webster's dictionary speaks of it as to partake, use, experience, occupy, enjoy with others. We've expanded our definition as related to giving. You know, how are you showing up in the world? How are you giving of yourself on a daily basis in your personal and professional lives? And how can we reflect upon the way we have done that and get better at it? And how can that be a personal choice and integrating that into what you do? It kind of has like a comeback effect. Like, it comes back to you. What you put out comes back.
Well, one of the big things that I was going to talk about is that all of us have learned so many cool things in our lives. So many cool things. Think about it, you know? And I kind of knew that I was going to take my secrets to the grave, but I didn't realize that I was also simultaneously taking all the good stuff that I had learned to the grave. And I got the opportunity a year ago to work with a young man called Christopher Patterson. You know him as Chris Fio. And I produced a podcast for him, which was called The Experience with Chris Fio. Was the #2 biggest podcast in Atlanta for 2 years. The reason this is important is I have this box on my shoulder, which is I call it the magic box, where every time I learn something cool or new, I put it in the box. And it's either something, somebody taught me how to tap something with my fingers on the table, or a cool magic carpet or something. Anyway, as I was helping Chris create his podcast, I gave him every one of my cool tricks, my fun tricks, the stuff that I had learned that made my life really interesting. And I was sharing the really good things of my life with basically a stranger. And it was the most amazing experience, because it made me realize I'm kind of an interesting person. I have gone through amazing things, you know. I've also experienced a lot of emotions up and down, but that itself also changed my career. The moment I started sharing with people my trauma, the stuff that I don't know how to do. I don't know how to run this gallery. I don't know anything about art, you know. Lori Torchin, you know. It's the Fusion Film Festival.
But this is an example of great sharing, mentorship, and fulfilling, elevating. And that's what I think we do here at this gallery, at Mills Gallery. Our job is to really elevate the artist, and we couldn't do that without the kind of team that we have here at Mills, which is a great example of share strategy at work.
Which you have pointed out is what makes Mills interesting, because 5 people run this gallery, 3 women, a black man, and a gay man. And we're all in each other's business, and we all listen to each other, how we feel about art, and what it is that our respective community needs to see on the walls here at Mills. I think in that way, we're almost radical.
Exactly, and then what we're able to do in terms of elevating the artist and giving them the tools from your toolkit.
Or yours.
Everybody has a toolkit, and it's good to share those toolkits. But no, so back to share strategy as maybe a personal approach. We have talked about as a mindful exercise, a mindfulness of daily practice. I like to reflect upon my day at the end of the day and say, hey, what can I do better? Do I need to put somebody on my list the next day to elevate? And forgive myself for being impatient in line at the grocery store. But trying to continue to get better at sharing and to give. And I think of a person, too, that also has had a lot of influence in sharing what he knows is Harold Bard. And we would not be here if it wasn't for Harold Bard, who is in the audience, who shared of his network and brought us together so that we could work together here at this gallery.
That was your sharing strategy. You put us together.
So we came together, too, also in a point of difficulty and pain in our lives. And
for me, the young man whose podcast I produced, he was run over 6 months ago, unfortunately.
And I lost my father, and extremely difficult. But, you know, when we think about those that we have lost, I've been to a lot of funerals in my life, unfortunately, and I always go to those funerals and say, well, how did this person lead their life journey, and what did they share with the world, and what's my takeaways from this person's life in the funeral? And as I think about my dad, some of my takeaways for him is he was a cheerleader for all of his children. He lifted us up. He suggested and supported possibilities and opportunities for us. And he also didn't mind spending a little bit more time around the coffee pot at the office because relationships were important to him. And so that was part of the way he shared, and he shared his music. We learned music from my father. He shared his love of music with us. So one thing that we have discussed, and I think is true, is what of yourself are you going to share in an authentic, personal way that truly makes sense for you and can help you along your journey and help others as well?
My final comment is, have you been outside? Let's be nice to each other. Let's be nice to each other and help each other come down from this anger, from this confusion. Let's help each other. My whole career, the whole trajectory of my life changed. The moment I decided helping others was number one. Everything else kind of fell into place.
So what are we really sharing here?
We're sharing our love.
Our love.
And we hope you got something out of this. Thank you.
Thank you.